Warrant of arrest issued in Zimbabwe for former President Robert Mugabe's son, Chatunga. A court in Zimbabwe has issued a warrant of arrest for former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe's youngest son, Bellarmine Chatunga Mugabe, after 27 years old failed to attend court. The IOL has seen the statement from the National Prosecuting Authority of Zimbabwe, which stated that Chatunga was expected to appear before the Beitbridge Magistrate's Court in the border town on Monday. Chatunga was due before the court for a routine remand hearing following his arrest 2 weeks ago on charges of disorderly conduct. The longtime president's son also faces charges of the possession of prohibited weapons in the form of a knife allegedly found on him. Allegations are that on August 31, 2024, the accused person's vehicle, which was being driven by a South African national, was stopped at Bubi security roadblock in Beitbridge. The driver was asked to produce his passport and vehicle registration documents. The prosecution authorities' statements read. The South African national has been identified in media reports as Irvin Molokoza. The Zimbabwean authorities said before the driver could comply, Chatunga allegedly handed his passport to the police officer. The police officer ordered the driver to park the vehicle on the side of the road. It is alleged that the accused person complained after the police officer requested that the driver park the motor vehicle off the road. He, Chatunga, allegedly disembarked from the vehicle and charged towards the police officer shouting, "What are you doing? You are delaying me for the fourth time. I'm rushing for a wedding in Harare. Check my passport. Don't you know who I am?" The National Prosecuting Authority of Zimbabwe stated regarding the disorderly conduct charge. Regarding the possession of prohibited knives charge, the authorities said during the scuffle, a small brown knife allegedly fell from the accused person's black wooded fleece jacket. The police recovered the knife, leading to the accused person's arrest. State media in Zimbabwe reported that Chatunga will now have no answer for his failure to appear in court, in addition to the charges stemming from the Bubi incident when he was with Molokoza. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe to cull 200 elephants amid drought-induced food shortages. Zimbabwe's Wildlife Authority has announced plans to cull around 200 elephants to address a severe food shortage triggered by the ongoing drought. The move, intended to provide sustenance to residents facing hunger, has sparked debate amongst conservationists who argue for alternative approaches. The drought, exacerbated by the El Nino phenomenon, has devastated crops across southern Africa, with the World Food Programme predicting that 7.6 million Zimbabweans will experience food insecurity from January to April next year. The culling is being framed by the authorities as necessary interventions to alleviate both human suffering and the growing pressure on Zimbabwe's overburdened national parks. It's estimated that Zimbabwe is home to nearly 100,000 African elephant Loxodonta species, but speaking in Parliament on August 11th, the country's Environment Minister Stembi Sonyoni said that was more elephant than it needed, The Guardian reported. While the Wildlife Authority views the culling as a dual solution to both the food crisis and the environmental strain, many conservationists are opposed to the decision. Critics argue that the cull is a short-term fix that may have lasting consequences. This is not the first time the region has resorted to such measures. Namibia, which is also battling its worst drought in decades, recently culled 83 elephants and plans to kill 100 more in the coming months. This is not the first instance of elephants culling in Zimbabwe. The first significant cull occurred in 1965 due to concerns over the impact of vegetation following a population surge driven by increased access to water. Additional cull took place throughout the 1980s, with the most recent one in 1988. The increasingly harsh climate conditions are forcing government to make difficult choices, but experts warn that without sustainable solutions, these problems will only worsen. On the other hand, have some empathy for the Israeli people. Zikan's comparison of Shakespeare's Sherlock to Israel must be contended. Shakespeare's work Prophetic in Nature, September 12, 2024. Israel is not recycling the persecution that the Jewish people have suffered over millennia of oppression and violence against the people of Gaza. Such a simplistic view belies an ignorance of what occurred on October 7, 2023, and a further ignorance of the repeated attacks on the Jewish people by terrorist groups operating from Gaza and the West Bank over the past few decades. Kant's grandiose description of evil and wickedness, aura of unthinkable proportions, all performed by the Zionist architects of apartheid, reveal that the article was written by someone more concerned by hyperbole and emotional propaganda than the facts. Israel was founded as a safe homeland for the Jewish people to escape persecution, not just from the Nazis, but from the Russian pogroms, Arab forced exclusions, and most of the worlds that had refused to help them escape the Holocaust. Every attempt has been made over the past 3/4 of the century to come to the peaceful resolution between the Arabs and the region and the Israelites, but there are radical groups identifying as Palestinian leaderships and have prevented a lasting peace. On October 7th, the repeated anti-Israeli violence resulted in the murder of 1,200 Israelis, many of them children and the elderly, in a day. The violence involved mass sexual violence, torture, and mutilation, all of which is well documented and recorded by the perpetrators themselves. The act of violence was organized and condoned by Gaza's government. On top of this, well over 200 hostages were taken prisoner, many of them subjected to torture, rape, and execution. If Lesotho were to wage a brutal invasion of South Africa, would we not have the right to retaliate? Would we not have the right to do what it took to save our hostages and prevent such an invasion occurring again? This isn't about blunt revenge. This is about stopping an October 7th from ever happening again. And Israel has more than a right to do what it takes to destroy Hamas and cripple the enemies that took so many of its people's lives. I urge Khan and others to have some empathy for the Israeli people, to see this conflict from their side and to step into their shoes, and to not merely see them as an inhuman enemy to scorn and protest. Nicholas Wooden-Smith, Cape Town. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of independent media. And lastly, justice for murdered Rebecca Cheptegei is imperative, says from a Nigerian gold medalist. The first Nigerian to win a gold medal at the Olympics, Chioma Ajunwa, has demanded justice for Ugandan athlete Rebecca Cheptegei. Cheptegei, who competed at the Paris Olympics in August, died in Eldoret, Kenya, less than a month later after being set on fire. According to Kenyan police, Cheptegei's former boyfriend allegedly doused her in petrol and set her on fire following a dispute over a plot of land. It brought to the fore the issue of gender-based violence (GBV) in Kenya, as it makes the fourth instance of a female athlete being killed in the past 3 years. Long-distance runners Agnes Tirop and Damaris Muti Mutua, as well as the sprinter Edith Muthoni, and have all died over the last 3 years in GBV incidents. Ajunwa, who won a gold medal at the 1996 Atlanta Olympics in the women's long jump, condemned the incident. It's shocking, devastating, and deeply saddening. This is not the kind of conversation we should be having after the Paris Olympics, where Rebecca completed and performed well, Ajunwa said in an interview with sportboom.com. I can't stop thinking about her, the children she left behind, and her family. It's a huge loss for them. Now serving in the Nigerian police force, Chatunga is in a good position to suggest how Kenya should fight GBV. We must end this cycle. Prosecution and strict sentencing of offenders are crucial. Women, particularly those excelling in sports, are being targeted and their lives are cut short, she said. The situation in Kenya, particularly for men, is concerning. People around the world may hesitate to enter relationships with them due to these incidents. Chatunga said women's athletes should be cautious when choosing a partner, as the government obviously can't influence such decisions. Some individuals may be motivated by financial gain or other opportunities that come with dating an athlete. No reasonable person would harm, let alone kill, their partner. There was no place of apathy on the issue, insisted Chatunga. We can't fold our arms and watch women being murdered in their prime. These are young women doing well in the sports and working to take their families out of poverty. We want this to stop across the continent. As a former athlete and advocate against gender-based violence, I am deeply outraged. Justice and Rebecca Cheptegei is imperative. We must stand in solidarity with survivors and ensure their voices are heard. And that's it from Egypt's Africa. Stay tuned to our USA and political updates.